Okay, I think we are live, and thank you everyone for joining us today on this week's office hours. I know we've been a little bit sporadic in how often we've been able to do these, but again, thank you for jumping on today. I just wanted to stress the importance on this week's call about blood sugar management and just taking a look at our metabolic type, our food sensitivities to manage those shifts, those peaks and crashes of blood sugar that can do so much damage in the body. So I have just finished our interview for the Functionally Enlightened podcast with Dr. John and Chef Colleen, who wrote together the Diabetes-Free Cookbook and Exercise Guide, which is a very helpful tool you can pick up and be able to start to tailor some of the meals and at least incorporating, 2 or 3 different recipes a week and seeing how this impacts your blood sugar regulation, how it impacts the energy and the mood, as well as any digestive symptoms. So I'm always an advocate for an N of one approach. Everyone's going to have a different dietary need, and that dietary need is going to shift from meal to meal or day to day, and things need to be adjusted. But as we return to functional health, we'll be able to notice when our bodies are needing a little bit more of, for instance, a macronutrient or even a micronutrient. And it's not specifically, oh, I am going to eat this fruit or this vegetable, or I need to eat this amount of protein. It's more what is going to be beneficial to the body as a like an overarching picture, not drilling down to the very nitty-gritty, but how we can fuel our bodies best. So I just wanted to share one of the tools today that I love to use. We've talked about metabolic typing in other meetings, and we've talked about the MRT food sensitivity test. So today I'm really going to show you how I monitor the glucose swings in different clients that I work with. And the way I approach it is using either the traditional finger prick test. So that would be like a Keto Mojo, where you can measure both the glucose and the ketones in the blood. It's not very sustainable for people to be able to do that 1 to 2 hours after every meal and sometimes upon waking and going to sleep. So we don't want to prick our fingers multiple times. So the alternative is using a glucose monitor. And the company that I love to use is Theia. So I will share my screen with you just briefly so that you see what Theia can provide in terms of monitoring. It's such a phenomenal tool. I'm really glad that I found it. A beautiful way to understand how each person's individual meals are really helping them manage their conditions. So with this is just a particular example. My readings from November 15th through 20th. You can read a weekly report or a monthly report, but here we're going to look at just what we're provided here, the 15th through the 22nd of November. It'll give you the number of glucose spikes, the percentage of time and range. It'll give you the average fasting glucose, which in this case is a little high, and I'll show you why in just a moment. Also the activity score, the higher the score, the better in terms of the meals that you're consuming. So you want to be as close to 100 as possible. The glucose dips will be highlighted here. So this is showing that there's no hypoglycemic events. And that's something I used to suffer with often in the past. Also gives you an average daily score, which is helpful just to see, again, how your activities differ from time to time. So here in one particular day, there is 965 calories consumed. You see that about 67 grams of protein, 50 grams of fat, and 63 grams of carbohydrates. Now, the important thing is that in this particular app, we don't need to necessarily measure things out. Sometimes like MyFitnessPal and Chronometer, you have to measure out the portions so that you know exactly what these are, the ratios are going to be panned out as. But with this app, it's really AI that you can take a photo of your meals and it will determine, you can always correct it if it's wrong, it will determine the macronutrient based on what it sees on the plate. And you can see here all of my scores starting here. I eat a pretty ketogenic diet, so very high in protein and fat and much lower carbs. And they are itemized here in the table. So we have our total calories, our protein, our carbs, and our fat, as well as fiber. So the goal is always to increase our fiber, at least 25 to 30 grams of fiber per day. That will feed our good bacteria in the gut and assist in healing the mucosal barrier. it's good to see that as one of the main pieces on this dashboard. We want to have about 75 to 80 grams minimum daily of protein for females, a little more for males. And then the carbohydrates we want to have at a lower level, especially if we don't want to have processed foods that are usually higher in carbohydrate. So if you just kind of look, my score for most of these meals are in the 90s, in the mid 90s, which is great. Again, you can see the calories, you can see the protein, the fat, and the carb, as well as the fiber. So just kind of summing them up and making sure you're in line with what should be best for your body type. You can use, again, the metabolic typing diet to see where those ratios should be. And in that way, you can adjust your diets, like which portions need to be larger versus smaller, instead of weighing them out. So again, a beautiful visual representation of how that pans out. Now, going back to the reason why I had that average glucose a little bit higher than it should be. Again, usually on a ketogenic style diet. So my average fasting glucose should be in the upper 80s. Not dramatic, but still just something to keep an eye on. And the reason being that my most recent meal, the last meal that I used during this sensor session, I tried to reintroduce oats. And being on a therapeutic ketosis style diet, grains are not included. So you could see here that there's a dramatic shift in my blood sugar on that one small portion. It wasn't even a full portion. It probably wasn't even a half portion, but that score was now at 35. And from here, you can actually click on that, see the breakdown, and you can see how high this peak happened. Granted, because I have some metabolic flexibility, I'm able to return to a baseline, but we never want to see a peak like this. So in my mind, my body's just not ready for that type of carbohydrate. And, that gives me more fuel to going to the roots and learning that it's not just those macronutrients, but the types of macronutrients. So we shift back, we look at our foods. This is like a journal that you can use, but all at your fingertips, and you can look at the analytics. You can even look at the glucose levels here, zooming in and out. Here you can see, like I'll zoom out, you'll see that there's very little of those peaks. And each time those peaks happened, there was a return to baseline at a pretty quick time, except for this day that I introduced those oats. So again, this was just a brief look at how we monitor metabolic resilience, for lack of a better word. And one of the key pieces to improving overall health, especially as we're turning down the inflammation in our bodies, blood sugar spikes, cortisol spikes, all of this can cause more of a catabolic state in the body. So we're breaking down way more than we're able to rebuild. And this is one way we can track and monitor that. So I will leave it here for addressing any questions, and we can start. I'll take a look at the chat right now.